Tres, dos, uno! What is going on, everybody? My name is Matt. Sometimes I go by the Grass Factor. Martin, it is another episode of Thirsty Smurfing Thursday. I don't know about y'all, but I have a thirst that cannot be slaked right now. And it's a good thing because we have the slaker of slakest, the quenchest of quenchers. I have no idea where I'm going with this.
Wait. Yeah, where are we going here?
This is AP English with Brother Robert at Christian Millers High School, and I'm trying to think of all the vocabulary words that he used on a regular basis. We have Ray, Ryan, and of course, we have a special guest this evening, gentlemen. Who do we have on the roster?
Oh, is it? No, where's he at? Is he here? There he is.
Wow!
Look at that.
There he is. Pow!
Listen,
what up, fellas?
Literally a top 5 all-time Thirsty Thursday episode, and we brought him back for more. So, all Castleberry in the house. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited. I think it's the last time you were on. It was a wonderful conversation, wide-ranging, and guys, I don't know if you've been following along, but Homeboy is doing work at home.
To
say the least.
A lot.
To say the least. I'm just honored to be here in everybody's midst, man. You guys are a good group of dudes, and I've learned a lot from you, and I just appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Learned how
welcome.
to ratchet up being an asshole. That's one thing you got figured out.
How to get threatened
how to do
all hours of the day.
No, how to do a true burn and return. There, Paul. Right?
Well,
did you not learn that?
That's true.
How to do a true burn and return?
Just a little bit longer, and the return's a little bit longer, but I think it's going to work out good. He's just taking He's taking the scenic route on the burn and return.
I am. That's a good way to put that. Yeah, we'll go with that. I'm sure we'll get to that point. Not to spoil anything, but yeah, people were looking at me like I was on something when I was doing that. So.
Oh, I get that all the time. I get that. What's wrong with that field? Why are you taking that? Well, it's really not that good.
Just buckle in and sit back.
Yeah. So listen.
I was going to say, I think we're pretty good at accumulating the psychopathic stalkers that just have managed to figure out how to stay out of involuntary commitment type of scenarios. Which, by the way, I got another phone call again at like 11 o'clock last night. It's amazing. We've moved into off show hours now with the phone call still going. It's pretty impressive.
With the crazy phone calls, man.
Get us back to reality.
Oh no, I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, for those that don't know you, that don't know Castleberry, maybe have not watched anything on your channel, or especially the Thirsty Thursday episode, because I thought we dove in really deep on some of where you came from and everything like that. And we don't need to rehash all of that, but just give us the quick and not so dirty spiel on who you are, where you came from, where you're at right now, and what the hell are you doing here?
Well, it all started in December of 1984. That's where it all began. But it was a cold night. Born and raised in Georgia. I started out in a digital marketing career, which led me to a little company. And again, not to rehash everything, but just a little background. But started at a digital marketing company, e-commerce company called Do My Own. And there I got hired to do video marketing for them, to just make how-to tutorial videos on the SKUs that they had pumping out the door. And that led to creating lawn care videos. They needed a voice and a face to do that. They were going to hire a guy from Florida to do that. And I said, no, I'm your video guy. I'm going to do that. And so just out of necessity, I started making lawn content. And I did not think I would fall in love with lawn care. It seems to be the scenario with a lot of folks that we talk to and in the groups that we're part of. They didn't want to be a part of lawn care or get into it. It just was a chore and a task for them. But I started doing the videos on that, and I'm like, hey, you know what? This is kind of fun. And I started going down that rabbit hole of learning X, Y, and Z on how to make grass grow and make it green and kill weeds and not kill grass. And one thing led to another. And here I am now doing this kind of crap on my own YouTube channel in my own yard and trying to make it look good. So is that quick and dirty enough for you? Is that what did I miss?
That's wonderful. Nothing. I think that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, so in the space of learning how to make grass grow and everything like that, I think that's a journey that we see people take different paths, different routes, and have different I don't know, either rates or impacts of discovery, I guess is what I would call it, right? So like we've seen people go from to kind of rehash a little bit of where you came from. We've seen people kind of go down that path and maybe we're we're learning a certain way or we're using certain products and then came to realize that, well, hey, like there's more than one way to do this and maybe this isn't the way I want to do it or whatever. So in that sense, in that vein, how just in that sense, how has that informed your content of how you try to, I guess, conceptualize your videos first when you're putting stuff out? Is it really just like, hey, I'm going to show what I'm doing? Or is there a lot of thought that's put behind, hey, if somebody were in my shoes where I was at some other point in my journey, I might want to hear this, or that. How do you approach that, like that beginning conceptual portion of content creation?
That's an awesome question, man.
That's a good question.
It really, like about a year ago when we moved into the house that we're in, financially, I mean, this house was like a money pit to move into it. We had everything go wrong with it. Oh my gosh. I mean, literally furnace, flood, flooring, kitchen, like name it, it all went wrong. So that first season into the house that we moved into, there was no budget to do anything in the yard. And so it was like Turf Boss came in and is like, we can't do that. Like, there's no way. Like, we don't have the budget to do that. We want to, just can't. So it was like, all right, well, we just got to put a Band-Aid on things and do what we can and like with the least amount of money possible. And so coming from having just any SKU that I would want to just pick off the shelf, throw it at the lawn, make a video out of it and have it turn out great to, oh man, I'm going to have to save up some money to buy that herbicide to kill the weeds next month, hopefully. And so that's kind of where it started again for me on my journey of having to go back to the absolute basics and dial it back, not, get top shelf stuff to dump onto the yard to get the grass to grow. It was very much bare bones, got to go back to the basics and figure this thing out. And I'll tell you what, man, that first season after we put the trash grass down and I installed that crappy irrigation system in the back, learned a whole lot. And a lot of stuff died. We had a lot of problems, mountain of problems. And yeah, everything just kind of died. And it's like, all right, well, I guess we have to start over again. That failed, but we learned something. We learned that irrigation's not that great. We learned that trash grass probably isn't the best thing to throw down. Let's hand pick some seed. Let's put a little thought into this and go at it methodically and not just put a Band-Aid on things. So yeah.
That's a tough point for people to hear. So that's another point I want to dig deeper on is and you've probably seen this in your content creation, both in people commenting and developing videos and getting questions back and all the kind of interaction that takes place. Do you think it's strictly a budget issue when it comes down to I'm going to Band-Aid this and not do what I think I need to do? Or let's take budget off the table. How do people talk themselves into doing things that aren't completely right in the lawn care space? We don't need to go into life because that's a whole different story. But it seems like this is a common mistake that people make over and over and over again. You kind of almost see it coming once you get enough experience under your belt. So, what do you think is going through people's heads as you've seen it, come back through comments or questions or things that pop up in your feeds and things like that? What do you see that you're just like, oh boy, this is not going to turn out well, and I know already that it's not going to turn out well because it's not fixing the root of the issue.
I think what I've seen in conversations that I've had, people, I think they get trained to think they got to do X, Y, and Z with this stuff. And it's like, well, it's kind of hard to have an answer to that without talking about budget. But I think people do have to consider that, oh, well, I can't go buy that $100 bag of whatever. I've got to get the cheap crap on the bottom shelf of the Walmart's that's got the discount label on it, and maybe I'll toss that out and hope and pray that it works. But I think that's a problem too, is that people they want it, but they necessarily don't want to do it. Maybe that's an unfair statement or a blanket statement to make for a lot of people, but especially with some people I've had an interaction with around here is, man, that looks awesome. What'd you do? Well, I did this, this, and this, and this is what you got to do, and here's how you got to maintain it. And a lot of them are just like, that sounds like a little bit of work. I don't know about that. So I think I don't know. I think that's kind of where people get hung up a little bit, is that takes a good amount of effort. And yeah, it does. And you gotta look at things a little bit, read some labels, do a little bit of studying to have success. And maybe that's where we get hung up and stumble. I don't know. What do you think?
I was gonna say I kind of want to hear everybody's opinion on this, because
how long you got, buddy?
Yes, because I think all four of us here are going to have different takes on this based on the types of interactions we get. What do you got, Demay?
I just see
quasi condensed version you can.
Yeah. I mean, so I see people with a lot of mental gymnastics that think that, we're a society of hacks now. I can hack this, I can do this, I can shortcut this and get 80-20 rules, things like that. There are some axioms and some rules and words to live by in turf that'll save you some time, save you some money. But generally speaking, just like Paul said, like, you have to do the work. And I think that's where people get hung up, is that they either get somewhat into it and then realize this is too much. So maybe what it is that it's some of not seeing it from the end and working their way backwards. And so they don't, start and then get halfway and fail. But the whole Band-Aid thing, the fact that, a product, and I'll turn this over to Ray. Ray, how often would you say that a product is the way out, or some newfangled solution or something like that? I mean, I don't see that happening very often, other than just good agronomy. And I go back to that whole thing of, hey, we grow grass well on 6 continents, and we don't have Green County Fertilizer or Yard Mastery or I don't care who, Anderson's, whatever, don't have those all on the same continent, right?
Carbon Earth.
And it works out pretty good.
Oh, I got a comment. I got a comment there, but I'm gonna let Ray go.
Carbon, rest in pieces, sir.
Ray, you're muted.
Oh, Ray's making a great point right now, and the only person that hears him is the little dogs next door. Damn it!
While Ray gets that fix, you're still not coming through, Ray. While he gets that fix, I'll chime in for a second here, and my school of thought on this, again, is purely based on the interactions that I pay most attention to. So understand that's going to be skewed by my own mental illness, right? But
sure.
So much of it, I think that when you have to look at it from purely an agronomic standpoint, right, of trying to tackle problems with agronomy, it highlights how much of the rudimentary, boring, basic, turfgrass 101 level understanding that you don't have, and immediately jump towards tackling the great abyss, the unknown of the soil microbiome, right? And I don't know why, but there's something about the great unknown, right, of the soil microbiome and fixing that registers so much more emotionally with people. Case in point is that if I put out 10 videos about the mystery of soil and how we're going to manipulate it with biology and blah, 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 and it's going to save the world and the planet, versus, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and chances are that a lot of the phosphorus and potassium we apply, we probably don't need to apply. And you look at the analytics of both of them, the things about the soil and the great unknowns and all of that are going to do incredibly well in comparison, 3x, 4x, 5x, 10x in some instances, right? And I feel like it's the if you circumvent the rudimentary, it allows the person who doesn't accept it to avoid critique of the gap of their understanding, right? Like the Dunning-Kruger effect becomes more apparent if you admit if you bypass NP and K, right? Like I'm really struggling with words on this, right? Do you see what I'm saying? Like it's going to become ever apparent that if you start talking about what you're trying to do NPK related, and it's obvious then that you don't have a rudimentary understanding, then that becomes easier to critique. Versus if you're trying to manipulate something that is not really well understood, like soil biology and bacterial interactions and soil fungi interactions and plant root fungi relationships, and you start talking about that aspect of it, nobody really knows. Even science is still lacking in a lot of instances in that way of unpacking.
So in other words, Matt,
whatever. Versus
So in
looking
words,
at
Matt,
NPK, science is there. So one highlights the gap of what you understand. The other one is it allows you to talk freely about whatever you want because nobody can really critique you there because there is no real fucking understanding as to what it is.
You know what that means, Matt? Is that when people start talking about all this soil biology stuff, that just allows them to bullshit and scam. Okay? Anytime there's convo about soil biology, I shut that down as bullshit and scam. Don't come to me with that. First start talking to me about drainage, soil texture, pH, and NP and K. And if we're not talking about that, then I know that I'm dealing with somebody that is trying to circumvent fundamentals of agronomy and is trying to dazzle me with bullshit and take my money and take other people's money. Because, Matt, do you realize what the scam is in my area that really, really pisses me off?
What's that?
The wildfires?
Compost. Compost just pisses me the hell off. And do you know why compost pisses me off?
Because it smells?
No, it's because people using it have no concept of the fact that when they use it in the quantities that it is normally used in, they are grossly over-fertilizing the area. And I'm talking about grossly. Because, Paul, if somebody told you to apply 45 to 90 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square foot to an area as a fertilizer in a bag, would you do that?
I'd say go back to bed.
Yeah.
Have another gummy.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
we have these hackers that want to circumvent basic agronomy and soil chemistry and tell you, oh, just bring in 3 inches of compost and everything will be all right. You can disregard NP and K. You can disregard pH. You can just put everything on autopilot and not think about anything about what you're doing. Just put compost on it.
I would say
Well, I'll tell you what.
Of the hundreds of people that I know in this industry that range from really good at what they do to exceptionally phenomenal at what they do, and I would say legitimately, I probably know 100 people that fall into that category on a decently personal level. I bet I know 10. I was just trying to count 10, maybe 12 that have a very high level understanding of actually manipulating soil to the point of using biology to your advantage. That is how. And the thing is that I could take those same 12 people and put them in everyone else's environment, right? Like if I just rotated them all to be in new environments, new soil types, new conditions, new climate, they would all be lost at where they were, right? And so my point there is that it's not to say that it can't be done. It's just that the number of people that genuinely know how to do that is so small, and what they have been able to figure out is so nuanced that a lot of it doesn't even parlay over into other areas. So it would be difficult to teach it in such a way other than like, I know this works here, and it's not likely going to work for you there because we don't have all of these conditions that are one-to-one, right? And as you get to know those people, that's like one of the first things they'll tell you is that like, good luck in your area because it's not going to work because you've got this situation going on, and not insert whatever hypothetical you want. But again, it is such a highly finite number of people there. However, there's something emotionally attractive about that. Again, I don't know what it is. I think like a lot of it is an easy thing to compare it to is supplements in healthcare, right? And myself included. Like I will tell you is that I'm the first person to buy a new product that comes out in turf grass because I want to see what it does. And if it's got a great story behind it, I doubly want to see what it does. And if it has one of those stories that sounds so outlandish that it makes my head spin off my shoulder, like start talking to me about the quantum mechanics of getting electrons rotating at the same speed in the same direction, and everything within a 10-foot radius of this material also being affected to that same way. And I'm buying it like on the spot. And that's like legitimately one of the things I've been playing with for the last 2 years because whatever reason that it affects me emotionally and I get sucked into it and I want to do it. And I think a lot of people, it resonates with them. Same with healthcare supplements. If I showed you every vitamin that I have in my vitamin box over here, I think most people would laugh at me because there's like 30 different bottles of shit over there. And the ridiculous thing is like the number of ongoing trials that I have going on that affect, heart rate and physical output and different things that I look at for it because I get sucked into it. And I'll admit that, 85% of 90% of them have literally zero measurable impact on any aspect of my life, right? But I'm still the sucker for it and I've got to go get it and I still consume the content for it. Now, what I've had to learn how to do in that particular regard is shut up and not leave comments on videos and tell people who do focus on the basics that if you want to grow muscle, you need to do a hypertrophic type program to induce the type of stimulus that stimulates muscle growth, right? And not comment and say, you dumbass, all you need to take is Tonkat Ali and it's going to turn you into a mess. You're going to look like Schwarzenegger, you effing loser. Only a loser doesn't understand that, right? Because, I've learned being a content creator is that, when I read those types of things, it sends me to the moon, right? And I don't want to be that type of person. I digress. I've gone way off into left field.
I got to tell you, man. So two things. One, I wish we would have pumped the brake when we moved into the house and just take a look at the conditions we have first, instead of, oh my gosh, we got to bring in this really fast, and then we got to do this really fast, and we got to do that really fast. I would have pumped the brake, and I'll chalk it up to Turf Boss for saying she's the one who said it. Like we should have just held off a little bit, studied our property a little bit more, figure out what drainage we got going on, to your point, Ray, and then make a plan. But then this season, one of your guests you guys had on, Dr. Shaddix, he's the one that really made me think. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I figured just those two things out first, I bet I could have a lot of success. And that was light and water. I remember him saying that. He had the little chart, like, why are we even tackling soil tests when we don't know how our light interacts with our property, and is our watering right? And so I started there and went down that rabbit hole to figure out, how do I get the watering right? Light, I know, goes from east to west. Got it dialed in.
And that's why, Paul, I'm fond of saying on this show all the time, every time I deal with a guest, I tell them, you know what my favorite tools are for fixing turf grass issues are? You know what my favorite tools actually are?
I'm going to guess
Not
the
what you think.
$10 watering hose that you get from Walmart.
No.
A D9 Caterpillar.
Bulldozer, chainsaw, and trencher.
Ooh, chainsaw.
Those are my favorite tools. No, and you know why? I'm going to get really squirrely with people when they tell me I have a tropical forest around my lawn, yet I want this lawn to be perfect. At that point, I tell them, hey, you can either have your tropical forest or you can have your lawn, but you ain't having both. One of these got to go. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Likewise, the bulldozer, Paul, comes in when I'm dealing with what I call soil conditions that are unsuitable for grass. Because at that point, I'm not going to sell somebody, oh, I can spray this on your lawn and it's going to fix your soil. It's going to change the soil biology. No, I'm not going to pee on somebody's leg and tell them it's raining. Okay? I'm not going to do that to them. Instead, I'm going to be real straight to them and I'm going to tell them, your landscaper fucked you over by bringing in dirt to where it don't belong. And this dirt got to go.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys real quick. This is something that's been kind of tossed around ever since I started getting into this, and back in the DMO days, was it takes a long time and a good amount of product, if that's the route that you're going to go, to really change composition of things. It's not like a pump and dump, and then 2 seasons later you've got the absolute best, perfect scenario of a soil composition to get things to grow. So, true?
You're not wrong.
Yes, no. What do you
True.
guys?
You're not wrong. However, I do realize that there are certain conditions that are not correctable with chemical amendments. Okay, there are certain conditions that are not correctable, and that's when I tell people, your next date is with a bulldozer. That's it. Your next date is with a bulldozer or a moving truck. One of the two.
I'm going to be a little less nuanced about this and say that no, I may in 2 seasons 100% I'm not going to change soil composition into something that's going to create a perfect environment, but I can say that without a doubt 99% of the time in 2 seasons I can have a lawn that is growing as good as it possibly can. And
Sure.
again, 98% of the time it's going to be an all-star looking lawn. And it's not that I'm changing the soil conditions, it's I'm using the conditions that are in front of me to change what I'm doing on the property, right?
There it
So
is.
the goal isn't to necessarily make the changes to the soil all at one time that's going to create this natural, perfect environment of, set it and forget it. This isn't a Ronco, right? It's very much it's just altering my approach, right? And it's like, again, when I look at a soil test and I consistently have, potassium in as 30 parts per million, it doesn't mean that I'm gonna apply 6 pounds of potassium that year and expect the next year when I test it to be at 160 parts per million, right? And it's that I can apply somewhere between at minimum, if I'm putting down, every 2 units of nitrogen put down, as long as I'm putting down 1 unit of potassium in that regard, I don't have to worry about anything, right? Like it's peace of mind. It just changed my approach to it. It's not that I'm trying to raise soil potassium levels. It's that I'm making sure that I have enough potassium with my fertility to make sure I'm not flirting with that minimum level of sustainable nutrition, that I'm not flirting with a decline of plant performance as a result of not having enough potassium, right? So, and so when I'm making my fertilizer selections in that regard, I'm looking for a 20-0-10. I'm looking for a 30-0-15, or if I got a good deal on a 20-0-20, whatever the case may be, as long as it falls within that parameter, I know I'll be okay in that regard. Again, it's not that I have to change my soil test measurable potassium level right now, and it's going to stay that way for the next 6 years. And when I test it next year and it's still at 30 parts per million in February again, I'm not freaking out, and I'm calling, my local Department of Agriculture, and I'm like, you effing liars. I've been doing it the way you told me to for the last 6 months, and I've still only got 30 parts per million of potassium, right? It doesn't matter if the grass looks good, like, okay, that's just the number that's in front of you. But as long as the grass looks good, because I made sure that enough went down with the end that I put down to not induce any sort of potassium deficiency related symptom that creates a decline in turf quality. It just changed the way it changed my approach to how I manage it. I didn't go on this conquest of, I've got to fix every deficiency that I see in the soil and bring it up to the upper end of the range, and then everything's going to be perfect, take care of itself. It's not how it's going to work. That's not how it works. And you're not likely going to be able to make those changes in a season at all, or 2 seasons, or chances are probably not in 10 seasons. So,
Yeah.
just change the approach you take.
Change the approach, because here's how I approach a soil test. The only time I will say omit a nutrient is if it's already fairly high on the test. Otherwise, my approach is to constantly feed a very balanced, fertilizer package. That's why I'm a fan of certain products. I'm not trying to bump up one level. I'm just trying to constantly feed whatever the grass could possibly need. And the only time I omit something is if, say, I have the good fortune of, for example, having soil where the guy before me was fond of throwing down, say, 131 mat. Then I can omit something if my predecessor was putting down 131. And by the way, 131 is a very common thing here in Hawaii. Extremely common.
What were you going to say, DeMay?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, mine's, I think, a little bit more 30,000 foot view, but I look at like what Castleberry was saying is, can you throw a bunch of stuff at it? And I think you have to first look at what the limiting factors are. Like, are there critical things that are going to be working against you that are going to lower your ceiling? And then, to your point, Matt, is using effectively what's there, right, to maximize those results. J-Pink, throw this thing up real quick. Somebody asked me about this. It reminded me of it to talk about this. So Shaddix has his own. I have my own. Now, light isn't usually an issue on athletic field, so I don't include it in this one. But it's an absolute must-have in any other sort of ornamental or amenity turf, right? Golf course, lawns, anything like that. But I think the point here is that things that we have that have the greatest impact on turf and turf quality and turf health are at the bottom here, but it's also ones that are really difficult to change, especially like in situ, like if we have to amend a certain landscape or a certain stand of turf, right? Changing or adding drainage, means we're either regrading or adding under drains. That's a really, really invasive process. Either way you slice it, right? So what do we have to work with on there? Irrigation, same thing. If we don't have it, are we going to move hoses around? Are we going to do things to manipulate it above ground? Or are we going to go ahead and put an in-ground system in? Either way, it's either a pain in the ass or really expensive, or maybe both, right? Now, as we get higher and higher, we have more control over these things, right? And the last thing at the top here is that renovation, meaning that if we've sought to maximize this to the full potential, right, and use all those, recognize all the weaknesses, right, and then push forth with anything that we control within, mowing properly, fertilization, aeration if you need to. That's more in sports fields that get compaction, things like that. But the whole point here is that if you can't manage against what you have that's detrimental to you growing grass, right, first, and if you can't manage forward on the things that are helping you, right, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. It doesn't matter what kind of products you have, so. And more to the point, to more tangibly, it would be, we've talked about, I can't remember, we talked about this with Kenny Cooper, I think, way, way, way back, was, he had a lot of disease problems, and he's like, well, what do I do? How do I put together a fungicide program? And, listen, the most simple way would be the most detrimental or recurring disease that you have, go all in on that and take care of that issue, right? Don't be afraid to spend some money on that, and don't worry about the rest. If something else gets you, it gets you. That's just but as you add more layers, you add more complexity to your program, those are things that influence other parts of it. And Bray and Matt both know this, is that, I try to influence more and do more by putting this product down to combat this. Well, that might exacerbate another problem, somewhere else in this triangle, right? So
It's like taking the medicine to fix one problem that gives you 50 others, right?
Well, and that's what I always tell clients is, two things on this to visualize, right? So the drainage, irrigation, any of these pieces, right? Imagine if I shrink down, if I have really crappy drainage, right? I don't have good grading, I don't have under drains, I have really, really low percolation rate soil, things like that, right? I shrink that drainage down. So imagine that drainage wedge is like a third the size of what it is. Now I've got it. Now let's go up the chain here. I've got an irrigation system in the ground, but it's like 30 years old. The nozzles aren't very good. The coverage is poor. Sometimes it doesn't kick on when it's supposed to. So I shrink that one down to about a third of its size. Now let's say that somehow the mowing gets out of whack. My pest management isn't on point. Surface management, as far as those are other things, but that's more sports related. But fertilization, one of these other things is off, right? It's very easy for this to tip over. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's how we use it to visualize. The other thing that we tell clients not to do too is don't play turf pyramid Jenga. Like I think what you were saying. Don't try to start pulling pieces out and expecting to get good results. So
Yeah.
the idea is to maximize to the extent possible what you can. And if it's not good enough, then you get up to the top and you're like, all right, now I need to renovate. If you do all these things right, and then you mitigate and manage for all these things, and it's still not good enough, it still doesn't meet the, the qualitative standards that you have for your lawn. It's time to start over.
Yep. Yeah, I mean that's where we ended up, right? It's just everything went sideways, and it was time to just, all right, well, wait, let's just clear the table, take the arm, swipe it down the table, and let's breathe for a moment, and let's just take a look at where we have some problems. And for me, one of the biggest problems I think I had, my irrigation was just crap. If I could go back and strangle the guy that just threw all the stuff in the cart and said, this is what you need, go put this in, I would, but we're not going to rehash it. So for me, it was.
Let's talk about that. Like, explain to us what happened in 2021 that led to where we are in 2023. Give us the rundown of the chaos.
So what really started it all was we were in a drought and we had water restrictions in place. So the crappy irrigation system that was installed couldn't even run it. We could run it twice a week for 15 minutes. And that's not 15 minutes per zone, just 15 minutes flat. It's like, who's going to keep something alive with that? Nobody can. So that slowly added to the dying of the turf. I wouldn't say slowly because it gets, surface of the sun hot out here. But at the same time, we had a Japanese beetle invasion that same year. So a lot of the sod farms and the turf that was delivered, we had those puppies just lying dormant in there, gnawing away at it. And so you're putting in sod that's got these grubs just kind of chilling. And the next thing you know, you've got the extension office going around to people's yards and spraying them down for these Japanese beetles that are just kind of, chilling, right? So that excessive
who was
heat,
doing that?
Yep. The extension office, Utah State Extension
Office. That is when you know you have a bad problem.
Jeez.
I remember it was pouring down rain that day, and they were two guys in a truck, the other guys behind with the hose, just hosing people's yards down. And then the next week, you see them going around the city and hanging up the traps to capture the Japanese beetles. So it was a problem, man. I think I read in the news that it hadn't happened for like 30 or 40 years. The last time they had this problem. But yeah, I mean, so we had triple digit heat for weeks on end. We were in a drought. Nobody could water anything. We had the Japanese beetles. I mean, it was just, it just felt like it was the perfect storm, an absolutely terrible time to try and get grass to grow. Perfect timing, right? Moving into a new house and you want to put in sod in the backyard so the kids could play on it, and then it just dies. It's a really good feeling. Made me really happy. So that was the starting point of okay, well, that failed. That sucked. What do we do now? Well, luckily we just were able to just, all right, well, it's all dead. Might as well just kill off what's left and start over. But again, when you guys had Dr. Shaddix on, he said, the water and light thing really struck a chord with me. I'm like, okay, I really need to be methodical about this. And so I started going down the path of, wait a minute, what is my water pressure? How many gallons per minute do I have? Let me talk to the irrigation company and figure out what kind of water pressure I should have to my property and just kind of engineer it from there. And I quickly went down that rabbit hole and people talking about droplet sizes and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't go that deep. At the very least, I wanted to say, all right, if I want to run one line, how many heads can I get on that line with the water pressure that I got? Let's figure that out. Let's at least start there and see if I can't get that under control and dialed in. And I felt like we did that. We did a pretty good job. And that's another reason why I put in the landscape bed, to be honest with you, in the backyard was, all right, the space I had with the water pressure that I have, it wouldn't allow me to get the head to head from the fence to where my concrete pad was. And so, yeah, there you go.
Ah,
It Where that brown fence was, I had heads going all along that fence. And with the water pressure that it just was not throwing all the way back to the concrete pad. So it's like, all right, well,
uh-huh.
let's shrink it down a little bit so that where I do want turf, I can get that head to head coverage coming from the landscape bed back to the concrete pad. And so, to be honest,
Love
that's
it.
where we started. We killed everything. We ripped it up. And it's like, all right, well, we know we need to shrink it. Well, how do we do it and what do we do? It's like, all right, well, let's put it in a nice decorative water bed or landscape bed and go from there. And so shrinking it down to a manageable size with the water pressure we got allowed me to figure out the heads that I wanted and the nozzles to get the head to head coverage and at least get that turf covered in a good manner. So that was kind of a starting point.
I like something. I like something that I see in that photo of your backyard. You know what I like about your backyard design there? I go
It doesn't have
ballistic
Bermuda.
when I see no, I go ballistic when I see grass next to a fence. That is a sore subject with me. Super sore subject. For many reasons.
Why is that?
Number 1, light. Number 2, air movement. And number 3, if somebody has a different grass from their neighbor and there's grass growing fence to fence, the grasses will mix and contaminate each other. So, I just, because basically, for me, that would be the other use of a bulldozer. Is tear out all that frickin' grass right next to the fence because it don't belong there. I don't want to see it there.
So you added the landscape beds, and I see you've got some trees in there. Let me ask, what did you end up putting in those places?
Yeah, so 2 of the trees were just in the moment purchases. In the middle, we have 2 Golden Globe peach trees that we put in. And then on the far end, so if you're looking at the picture over by the white fence, that is a gold ginkgo. And then
Love
on
it.
the far right is a sunset maple.
Excellent.
We're
So
not done. We're gonna put more.
in picking the trees, I assume you did the peach trees for practicality purpose, right? Like a little a little reminiscent of Georgia, but also in the opportunity that you get some peaches on the back end. That's a win-win, right? Is
Yep.
that kind of the thought process there?
It,
I actually love that. I
yeah,
love the nostalgia of it. I think that's actually incredible.
yeah. It was my 7-year-old. We were at the nursery and we were trying to pick out what we knew what we wanted on the ends, and we were trying to pick out what was in the middle. He just absolutely loves peaches, and
Mhm.
we were just walking through the nursery. He saw the tag. He's like, "Hey, this is a peach tree. We should do this." And my wife and I looked at each other, and we were both like, "All right, yeah, I guess that sounds good." I mean, yeah, it's a little hat nod to my hometown, the peach state. And yeah, we hope in a couple of years we'll be able to go back there, pick some peaches off, and make a cobbler or something. So
Oh,
Then
that would be
on
cool.
a ginkgo is, in my opinion, one of my favorite trees in terms of aesthetics. It is just such an aesthetically appealing tree to me.
mm,
That very classic look, the beautiful brightness of colors you get, especially in that transition of fall. Again, I think that's an absolutely fantastic tree. The Now I'm interested in the maple, and the
Mm,
reason why I'm interested in the maple is that as that one matures, one, I think from a co-beneficial relationship of shading into the house, work on energy bill. I think from a practicality standpoint is great. However, you are going to lose grass in the long run. You have already shrunk down grass in some regard. You have a concrete pad to the next area, and I assume that's like an outdoor hangout area. Maybe some extended area for having guests over kind of thing. Is that what that's for?
future shed site that I have to put out with a water hose.
Okay, okay. Um, I
You
like
see
where
what I
where
did
you're
there?
going
You
with
see what
that.
I did
I
there? Yeah.
did see what you did there.
Yeah.
If you've never been on the starting side of a structure fire, I recommend doing it at least once in your lifetime. It's a good time. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess where I'm going with this is that you're going to have to shave down more grass. Um, were you totally okay with that when you were getting into it? Like you're like, yes, we're gonna put this in. I know it's gonna be a big tree, but you know what? I would rather have the shade from the tree than the grass.
Yes, because the for me, the front yard is the main stage. Backyard, that's something to play with day in and day out. We went through so many iterations of what we wanted to do with the backyard. One idea was to completely plant a mini orchard back there and no grass. But we compromised and said, all right, well, let's get a little bit of grass growing back there, and go pick out some trees to put along the fence line. Totally hear you on the maple. One of the reasons we chose that one, quite honestly, when we go walking around the neighborhood, there is a one street in our neighborhood that's got it's just lined with these Pacific Sunset maples, and
Hmm.
one of them in the fall, half of it goes orange and yellow, the other half goes like this bright red, and we were just so captivated by that. We had never seen it before. We're like, man, that looks pretty freaking cool. What is that? And so we went down the rabbit hole. We figured it out. We saw it at the nursery. We're like, yeah, we want that. And I didn't say it at the time, but I'm sitting here thinking to myself, that's probably going to grow big at some point in time. That's probably going to throw a lot of shade, which will be nice when it's, hotter than the surface of the sun. Um, but I'm gonna have to compete with that to get grass to grow back there. And if that's the case, so be it. If we lose some more turf, whatever. I think in my opinion, I think it was worth it to put the tree in there to look at something that we know we're absolutely going to be in love with in a few years, instead of something to just decorate and kind of be okay with. So yeah, I'm good with it. If we lose some turf, great.
I
We'll
wish there
figure it
was
out when that
more
time comes.
people that took that kind of practical approach to it. And being okay from the get-go of understanding, like, you know what, yeah, I think we're in a prime position of saying that already. We've had to shave out grass before. We like how it worked out. It actually, we were able to get a little more function out of what we have by doing so, and see the advantages of it, right? And I think going into it with a plan like that, and understanding that, yes, I'm going to have to cut grass now, but these are the advantages that we see from it. It outweighs the negatives that are going to go along with it. Therefore, let's move forward in this regard. I think there's a lack of forethought that a lot of times goes into landscape planning. One of my favorite things that I saw on the landscape side of things were people that did these monumental installs. And then 2
Mm,
years later, when their 3 gallons became 5 gallons or 7-gallon plants, and then they have to go in and remove 30% of the plants that they
mm,
installed on the front end because it's so densely packed in there that it
mm.
no longer looks like a functional landscape, and it lost all of its
Yeah.
aesthetic appeal because it's so densely packed together. And again, a lot of that comes from a lack of forethought, right? It's just immediately serve the function of plants in place that are going to look good right now, not how it's going to look in 3 years, not how it's going to look in 5 years after ever. And that was obviously the approach you took with those plants, right? And
Yeah.
choosing to which ones to put in and what was going to happen as a result of it. And that's going to work out to your advantage, I know. And again, I think that's just a great lesson that everyone listening should apply in every aspect of whether it's your home or a homeowner that you're consulting with or that you do spray work for. Tell them if they are planning on doing a landscape install. And I'll say this too, as a spray guy, if you're a spray technician and you're out there, you need to start learning this shit. Like it may
Absolutely.
not be in your job responsibility to do that, but I'm telling you, you start doing that and it's going to pay dividends for you in the long run. And it may not be an immediate thing that you can capitalize on, but in the long term, you're going to end up making a lot of money just by having that knowledge. It will pay. What are you going to say, Ray?
For sure. For sure. Because, Matt, you just touched a nerve with me. You know why I'm fond of a chainsaw? You know why?
Because of ill-planted trees up against foundations and shit.
Tree or else plant material packed too damn close together. Too much. Because you see, as you say, Matt, everything looks so cute when it's in that 3-gallon nursery can. But here in the tropics where we have no winter, do you know what happens in 2 or 3 years?
It's monumental.
It's a fucking monster in your yard, okay? It's a freaking monster in your yard. And that's where that chainsaw comes in handy. That's where even a bulldozer becomes necessary. Because fact of the matter is that here's the other thing about these overly dense landscapes. They become unmaintainable. Okay? They become literally what I'm going to call unmaintainable. They look trashy. They look overgrown. They look unkept unless some poor schlub is plucking at that damn thing every single week. And it's just a mess. It's just horrible. I mean, because, Paul, I've literally told people that I've worked for. I told, you know what your yard actually needs? Your yard actually needs a bulldozer. Scrape all this crap out and do it right next time.
Well, I think if you look at that picture, and this is a problem I think I see in a lot of landscape beds now that we're on the topic, is you throw it all in there because it looks good for the Instagrams. But for me, it's like we know for a fact these are the 4 trees we want. Let's space them out. Let's get them established and growing. And then we'll revisit if we want to put we do want to put stuff in between them. We just don't know what yet because who knows? Maybe that peach tree is going to grow at a 90-degree angle and shade half the yard. Who knows? But let's put it in. Yeah. Let's let it grow and establish, and we'll revisit. I don't want to just find out. I don't want to just throw things in there, let them start to grow, and be like,
just
crap,
because
I got to rip that out.
Because I'm gonna, I've always had an axe to grind with people that call themselves landscapers and landscape architects. I have a serious axe to grind with all of them. In that, I want to take them back to their work 2 years or 5 years after the job has been installed and ask them, okay, guy, how the hell are we supposed to maintain this and make this look nice without tremendous expenditure of resources? How are we supposed to do that? I'm asking a fair question. And I'm pretty sure this looked fantastic a month after it was installed. I'm very sure. I'm not doubting that. I'm not denying that. I'm not, pretending that it didn't look good. But then right now, 2 or 5 years later, this looks like crap. Okay? This looks like crap. And it's unmaintainable.
What do they care? They got paid. They got paid. What do they care?
Yeah. Yeah. But then, here's the thing is that in the meantime, you have this property owner that's looking at this and they're telling me, oh, but Ray, I spent $50,000 or $100,000 to have this all put in. It's like, what? It's like, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to
Ray,
spend
you
another
have to speak up.
25,000
I've got
pesos.
earplugs in, and I'm running a chainsaw. Full power.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's like you gotta. Yeah, unfortunately, you gotta spend another $20,000 to have this shit all ripped out because there's too much of it, and you gotta keep it minimal because, you know what really made me blow my gasket one day? I had this now former customer, tell me, "Oh, my friend in California has this very pretty and nice and well-kept yard." You know what I told that person? I told her, "Hey, I'm going to bet your friend in California doesn't have all this bullshit crammed into her yard. And that's why it looks nice."
I had an arborist. In fact, I think he was the one of the head guys at University of Idaho, somewhere up there. I may have been like North Dakota. And anyway, I remember him. He said, I've had so much fun being in Knoxville, driving around and seeing all these houses with the sickest trees I have ever seen in their front yard, and and he was like, "I'm sure you're all wondering, why I would see all these sick trees." And he explained. He said, "A sick tree is a tree in isolation." He said, "If you look at a forest, they self prune, they heal, they take care of themselves in their everlasting conquest of fight for life and fight for light and resources." And it said, you do not see people with chainsaws in forest having to manage trees to maintain perfect shape and structure so that it get blown over in wind, because it is a community of sorts at which they thrive. They have adapted to exist in that condition. So when you take something that is adapted to exist in that way and you plop out only one of them and you put them all alone in the middle of a square space, and you expect it to just really enjoy being there, is like you're joking. That's a complete and total
Yeah.
joke. So I say that to say is that I love the fact that you even went with more than one tree, right? I think, again, if you're in the business of installing trees, to never go with one in singular isolation, or if you do understand the level of pruning and care that you need to maintain a single dominant lead, and maintain branch structure, and what that type of pruning actually looks like, right? And I think there's a lot that you can learn on a very small, basic scale from even golly, what is it called? I'm drawing a blank on this word. Ray, the miniature Japanese art form for miniature trees. What is this
Bonsai.
called?
Okay.
Bonsai.
I'm going to be very specific. Actually, bonsai is not even the correct word, because when you're maintaining trimmed, structurally symmetrical plants in a landscape outdoors, that is called niwaki. Bonsai refers to plants growing in those containers or pots, but then niwaki is when you take a woody plant in the landscape and you keep that plant maintained. And by the way, guys, that is something that I do. I do that kind of trimming.
Exactly, right. So my point with that is that you can learn a lot by how they prune, for single dominant leads on a very small practical scale, right? And if you learn to visualize, you think, a tree in a singular area, like, should be pruned, think of it as like an arrowhead, right? Or almost a diamond like shape, and where you have that single dominant lead, or branch.
One
and
lead,
that's that
yes.
structure you want to maintain. And if you look at bonsai, a lot of it is based on, it may be varying heights and stuff, but you still see that triangular arrowhead like structure with a dominant lead, right? And that's very important, not just for the aesthetic of the tree, but for the function of the tree, right? In the lifespan of the tree. So again, I think you did great by planting them, more than one there, and I would also encourage other people to do the same thing. Talk to me about your front yard. What do you have all going on in your front yard?
Ooh, man. Well, first, where it started on, I was gifted a reel mower. Some people affectionately know him as Gator. That was gifted to me by a friend who moved out here from Georgia as well. He had this old antique mower. He used it in his backyard because he didn't want to have. He had one there because it was like 3 stories below his front yard, and then he had one for his front yard. And he's like, "I'm moving out there. I don't need the second one. Do you want it?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, bring it on." And so I started cutting with that, and um, hey, low cut turf with stripes in it. I think everyone's going to stop and look at it and go, wow, that looks pretty good. But for me, I looked at it and I saw just all different shades going on. I mean, I overseeded it prior to getting that reel mower just to try to get things to fill in a little bit better and try to make it look a little bit more put together, I guess. But the result of that was now I've got a mishmash of a whole bunch of I kind of know what, but I don't know what the other half is. So going into this season, I knew I wanted to just scalp the crap out of it, keep it low, and if it started to die off, great. But I mowed it all down with the idea of I'm going to set this thing on fire and start all over again with one grass type, and just have a consistent color throughout it. And so that was the goal. I wouldn't say it was the goal at the start of the season. That was my hope that I would get to that point, and I was planning for it, and luckily it worked out budget wise. But yeah, so we scalped it. I scalped it all down. I hit it with a round of glyphosate, and then I didn't want to hit it with a second round. I was going to, but for me, and look, I don't want to get into the political realm of this of chemicals versus no chemicals. If I can reduce the amount of herbicides I can put down, I'm going to do that. So after I hit with that first round of glyphosate, I took a torch to it and set the rest of it on fire to see what I could kill with that. And then, well, let me back up. Glyphosate, then watered for 2 weeks to see what I could get to just kind of grow back out. And then I hit it with a lawn torch, set it all on fire, and watered it some more. And then I raked the crap out of it, threw down some magical grass seed from somewhere in the Midwest from this dude that's got like 50,000 square feet of turf going on. And I fertilized it with some pixie dust, and that's where we're at now. We got a beautiful stand of perennial ryegrass going, and I'm kind of happy with it. So there's the nuts and bolts. That was taken 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you something in that I don't consider it political so much that you elected to burn off after you made that first glyphosate application, because me, Mr. Herbicide right here, my preferred method or technique after a non-selective herbicide application is literally a propane torch, and it's got nothing to do with politics. Okay, I'm not a tree hugger, but
Yeah.
my reason for utilizing a torch is because that reduces the amount of trash and weed seeds present in that area, and it just makes it cleanup a lot easier.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with, herbicides are bad. It's simply a propane torch can be one of the most effective tools for turfgrass renovation.
Yeah.
I mean,
look,
that was a good move. That was a good move.
Yeah,
Paul.
I mean, I appreciate it. I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say, yeah, that was totally the route that I was going. No, I don't, not at all. It was more so, okay, let me reduce the amount of chemical I'm putting down. What are the alternative methods? Let me go and research that. I know, being from the South, people burning off their Bermuda lawns, the whole burn and return, right? That was a very common thing. So let me look into that a little bit more. What are the benefits of that besides reducing chemical inputs, all that kind of stuff? What's so beneficial about setting a lawn on fire and then replanting afterwards?
I'll tell you what.
And that
I'll
there's
tell
tons
you
of
another
positives
benefit.
to it.
Yeah, I'll tell you another benefit in that, all the phosphorus and potassium that that grass has taken up from the soil over the years, you turn that into ash, and that ash goes back into the soil, you've instantly recycled nutrients right then and there. Because when the American Indians burned off prairies, this was not a terrible thing because it controlled the weeds, but at the same time, those burned areas literally grew back better than ever because all of that phosphorus and potassium present in the ash instantly cycled back into the soil instantly. And by doing that, you're just recycling constantly. You're just cycle back the nutrients, where people have this impression where, oh my God, fire is so bad. Wrong. No, fire is literally nature's tool. That is the ultimate reset right there. A fire. And, even for me, I'm a renegade in that fire is considered extremely bad, polluting, this, that, and the other here in Hawaii. You know what, Paul? I give 0 fucks. I have a propane torch on my truck, and I pull that out frequently.
I love it. I tell you what, man, I turned some heads that day out there with that little torch. It was entertaining.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, Paul, is that I most frequently use this propane torch in all of the pavement seams and sidewalks where the weeds grow, and I get less nasty looks versus if I'm walking around with a sprayer.
Oh yeah,
people know. No, people know. I mean, they see me with a propane torch just lighting stuff up. They know. Where on the other hand, they see me out there spraying something, they're shaking their head and walking away, or else they're staring at me, boring eyes into my soul. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, no, it was very satisfying to do it, and I mean, my back hurt like crazy afterwards. That wasn't in the best shape, but great benefits from it. So I'm happy I went that route, and if I were to do it again, I absolutely would just go fire route for sure.
Good man. Good man.
You won me over, Ray.
I think there's a lot of theoreticals that go into is that one, you're recycling a lot of potassium at one time by doing that. You're getting kind of a nice healthy mix of mineralizable carbon versus fixed carbon too, between the fully burned ash content and non fully combusted material that's left over. Heating of the soil surface, unobstructed view of the sun of the soil surface. So there's kind of a lot that parlays into it as to why you end up seeing so much of the aggressive results that you end up seeing. But I'll say is that anybody that's ever burned off Bermuda grass, it's kind of addicting because it's one hell of a green up the next year later. It's like, damn, that was pretty easy. The only thing you have to work out for is that watch out for is that do not. No, in my case, I would say at least try it once. But if you're not in the position to do so, be careful of structure fires that can happen because fire can get under things, and then 3 hours later, all of a sudden it's a fully involved fire, and the responding firemen will give you the Heisman and knock you out of the way to put it out. So
I will say, man, I wish you guys could have been here when I told my wife how I was going to go at it with round 2. It's like, I'm just going to set the lawn on fire. The fear and the amount of I am so pissed off at you in her face on that choice was just, I was just like, well, hold on. I don't think you understand what I'm trying to. I think in her mind, she thought I was going to dump some gasoline and strike a match, just throw it on there and just, pull the lawn chair out and roast a hot dog. But definitely not the case.
You know, Paul, and this is like speaking to anybody that's contemplating doing something like this. This is like a non-negotiable precaution. And this, I guess, in hindsight, is like relative to like what happened to you two, Matt. Is, whenever I pull out a torch, I always have a live water hose ready. So should this fire go where I don't want it to go, right there with the water hose dousing it, it doesn't have a chance to turn into, I don't want to say it, a shed fire, for example. It doesn't have that chance. And it doesn't have a chance to turn into a house fire or a car fire, because right there with the hose, it doesn't go any further than my intended area. But I gotta say that because a lot of people don't have that kind of common sense, Paul, a fire is looked at very negatively. And likewise, I have to also deplore this idea that you just go throw gasoline on an area and then strike a match. Because, by the way, my first lesson on that happened when I was about 8 or 9 years old, when my grandfather told me, don't you ever throw gas on something and then try to light it. My grandfather literally told me that. He told me don't. He told me don't, because what will probably happen is that gas will go off and take me with it. He said that if you are going to, use an accelerant or a fuel to help, kerosene or diesel is a lot safer if you are going to do that. I mean, but he told me under no circumstances do you throw gas and flip a match. He just said don't. And that has served me well over the years, by the way.
Good talk.
So yeah, that's where we're at.
What does the next growing season look like for you? Are you done with the projects? Is it time to just sit back and enjoy it? Have a cold Dr. Pepper, or are we doing basement waterproofing this year? What's on the agenda?
Yeah, no, it's never gonna be done. I mean, we just the landscape bed,
Gives me anxiety.
we're not done with that. We're not done with that. On the far right side of that picture that J Pink threw up in the backyard, what you don't really see there is we left a space open along the fence to plant more trees down on that side. We got to figure that out. That big square next to the concrete pad, we want to put a garden bed in there. In between those two plots, yeah, there you go. On that far in there. We want to put some trees along the fence there. We want to do a garden bed next to the concrete pad. In between the two grass areas, we want to put some hardscape there. Eventually build a shed for that pad there and get the man hangout going. So no, we're not done. And then look, we got to figure out how this grass is going to respond. This is my first go with perennial ryegrass. I've never grown it before. I've never maintained it. I don't know what it takes. I'm learning. I'm doing as much education as I can possibly do to figure out what's going to happen between now and next season. And even when next season gets here, I know I'm going to have to overseed it again for sure. But is it all going to die off and we have to start over again? Maybe. Who knows? But I'm ready for that. If that happens, we'll go back to square one and figure it out. So I think we're just going to continually learn. I don't want anyone to ever think that I know exactly what I'm doing and I'm going into this fully educated and know what the outcome is going to be, because I don't. And I'm going to learn along the way. I can sit with you guys. I can sit with experts all day long, and they can tell me you need to do X, Y, and Z because of this and that factor and this, and your property won't allow for this type of turf. At the end of the day, I just need to go out there and I've got to put the work in and see how it's going to respond and learn that way. And that's what next season I think is going to be for me, is sit back, look how all of this stuff is going to work. And if it's going to die, if it's going to thrive, let's just see and let's learn from that and adjust accordingly. Maybe that's an expensive approach and probably not the best approach, but that's the best way that I learn is just put the work in, do the best educated guess that I can make and see what happens. So
No, I don't think that's the worst way to go about it. Whatever, in my opinion, whatever is going to bring about the most joy for you, especially given what you put into it at this point, by all means, take that route. And if it's a situation, again, anywhere where we can fill a void, and this is something that I particularly get off on, right? Is when someone is like, "Hey, look, I've got this budget concern, and I want to figure out how to get to X, and only spend Y dollars. How do I get there?" And I love tackling that. I mean, shit, DeMay has a career out of doing that, right? And there's
Fortunately or
legitimately,
unfortunately,
right?
depending how you look at it.
But it's that part of it is actually fun, right? Because a lot of times you can get so granular with all the random shit going on in your head that you confuse yourself, and you blind yourself of the forest because of the molehill that's in front of you or whatever. And so having something to step back and take a look at it and be like, you know what, I'm just going to take a day and I'm going to sit on my back porch and I'm just going to vegetate and not think about anything and then revisit it. Maybe I ask somebody, maybe I don't. Is ultimately going to probably work out in your favor rather than just making a rash uh, decision, based on whatever you're emotionally feeling that day. Again, I point to the fact that there's a reason why, the first thing I do when something new comes out as far as a lawn care product is go buy it and have to try it is FOMO kicks in, and I start lining up the 5,000 potential issues in front of me that this may fix for me, and you clutch on to the top 3 and it's like, I got to, and then you try it and it lets you down, and then you spend the next week wondering, I mean, why did I do that? I did it again.
yeah.
At this point, I'm 37 years old. Why do I keep doing this? And sometimes you just got to accept that.
Matt,
Well, I'm just a sucker. That's why.
you know what? On many things, because of my age, I guess I am just hard to impress. Hard to,
I don't
suck
think
me
that's
into
your age,
something.
Ray. I think that's just you being ornery. Let's be honest.
Well, it's me being ornery, and also from an early age, having all of this nonsense that was pseudoscientific that didn't work, that ended up screwing me over. I'm yet even more skeptical. If any of it actually worked, I think I'd be less ornery. I'd be a lot more trusting.
I get it. Trust me,
Look, man, here's the thing. I can honestly say that this season has been one of the most enjoyable lawn seasons I've ever had in my life. Even when I started back in the do my own days, of creating the videos there just because I had to. And I say that because I'm finally at a point where I don't have to cave in to buying someone's product to get a result. I'm truly out there just enjoying the process of figuring out how I can get my property look good. And if it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, awesome. I'll learn something and readjust and figure it out for the next season. And I feel I wish a lot of people would do that, is just pause, pump the brake, sit back. Let's figure some things out. Let's learn some things before we just go out there, buy X, Y, and Z, dump it on there, or just shotgun blast it at the very beginning of the season. It didn't work, give up, and try again the next season. That's finally where I'm at. And I'm I'm not trying to be self-promoting by saying this, but that's the whole goal behind my YouTube channel now, is I'm finally at a point where I can just enjoy it. I'm creating stuff that I just enjoy creating. The lawn stuff is for me to go out there and do that. And I enjoy lawn work now. It's a thing for me to go out there and just have fun with it. And that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. And that's kind of hopefully the message I'm driving on the channel, is that I'm not about link in the description, buy this, go out and get, 4 pallets of that. I don't ever want to be down that path. And I don't ever want anyone to look at me that like I'm an expert or I know what I'm doing. Again, that's just not what I'm about. I want to have fun. I want to learn something. If somebody else learns something along the way, great. But at the end of the day, I'm just having fun, man. And I'm trying to get my yard to look good. That's it.
Let's look
Yeah.
at the quality of your content. That's all I'm going to say is that, in terms
I
of
appreciate that.
production value, there's very few people that put that kind of production value into everything. And it does exactly what you want to have come across. It does. What are you going to say, Demay?
Well, I was just gonna say that I think that we harp on it all the time. We maybe tease people a little bit of, I want to be told
Yes.
what to do, and doing things that are just dumb, flat out dumb. But
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said. I think there's something to be speaking about speaking to your tribe, the people that are in the same vein that you are, and however you choose to do that. If that's intentionally, from the start, or if it, I think you come from the same place that we do, Paul, is that you just get up there and do your thing, and there are a large group of people that just happen to enjoy that, and that's just how it is, and that's okay. I think there's a lot of people that try way too hard to endear and ingratiate themselves through the links in the description, through doing goofy shit and splicing in movie cuts and all kinds of other things that they think are going to get noticed and liked. And it's just like, hey, just be an honest person, be a genuine person, and show people what you're doing, and maybe they latch on, or maybe they say, hey, I'll never do that, but I'm going to live vicariously through Castleberry, and there's somebody out there that's probably doing that right now. There's probably people that are like, man,
Yeah.
I could never do that. And here he is doing it, and he's putting on a video for us. So I don't know. There's something to be said for inspiring people, but there's also something to be said for just being that person that somebody lives vicariously through and enjoys just watching them do their thing from afar. And I appreciate that about you.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that, man. And look, I don't want that to come off as me knocking anyone who does that kind of stuff. Hats off to you. You want to
I
do
do.
that?
Yeah. Hang on.
Have you watched our show?
Uh-oh. Yes, I have. No, and look, I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, yes, I do knock some of that activity. It's not for me. I don't ever want to go down there. I've had people already knocking on the door and sending the emails saying, hey, if you do this, here's a check that you get. I'm not interested in that. I've seen what comes with that kind of baggage. I don't ever want to be there. There's a dark side to it that I think a lot of people don't talk enough about. And there's some ulterior motives to it, and I don't want to be in that crowd. In my Ryan Nor and I talk about this. We often talk that the system is broken. The platform is broken because um, it doesn't award those who are out there genuinely just having a good time and wanting to share their talent with other people. And that's what I'm trying to achieve here. And it just so happens that I enjoy growing grass now. And now I'm trying to figure that out and learn from that. And whatever I learn hopefully translates through the video. And I learned something from that. Maybe somebody else will too. But I also don't want to put other people like yourselves in a bad light. There's a lot of people that I've got to know through this community who are professionals that I don't want to put their careers in jeopardy by doing something that could be damaging, and ultimately have something pulled off the shelf that a lot of people could benefit from because I did something wrong in a video, and now I've got myself in a legal battle or hot water or something like that. Now I'm kind of going off on a tangent, and I apologize, but I
No, you're not.
look,
Hardly, Paul.
I
No, you're not.
I
You're
just don't
good.
I just don't want that to happen. I just want it to be love doing lawn care, love creating content. It's there. If you enjoy it, I'm happy to have you. If not, it's not for you. That's okay. Go look at the 50 other channels that do it too. But yeah,
You know what? Here's the difference with you is that you literally do not have products or equipment to promote or sell anymore, right? You have none of that.
oh, thank
And
goodness.
likewise, no, and likewise, you know what? I can be here, and frankly, I give 0 fucks at this point. And you know what would be really neat is if, and you know what the fortunate or unfortunate thing is, Paul? Almost nobody from Hawaii even watches these shows. Okay? Nobody from Hawaii watches these shows. And even if they did, I wouldn't care. Because at that point, I'd call it career suicide or whatever, and I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Okay? I would not I would not care because I'm old enough to not care. How's that?
I'm getting there. I look forward to that day.
That's quickly approaching.
Yes, it is.
All right. We are going to wind this up. Do you have anything else for us? Do you want to make fun of us real quick? Call us mean names, condescending things. Tell us we're stupid. Anything above and beyond.
You are a fucking pussy.
Indeed.
That was not me.
Yes, we are.
Spencer.
Yes, we are.
Oh man, look, I've just come to respect this community. There's a lot of good people in it. There's tons of knowledge to be had. If somebody's a newbie and they want to start, right now, there's so many people who are willing to share that information with you. And I'm just appreciative of everybody that's willing to step in, correct me when I make a mistake, or point me in the right direction, and just get me on the right path. I really appreciate that, and I feel like we need more of that. When I first started getting into creating lawn content again for Do My Own, it was a good, solid group of people. And Matt, you remember those days? I mean, we all kind of sat at a table together and we got along because there was a common thread, and that was grass. And I think we've kind of moved away from that, sadly. And I wish it would get back to a point where we all just want to get grass to grow and we enjoy doing it. We're the weekend warriors that go out there, love to mow the yard, watch the kids run around in the background and playing puddles and throw a football around or something like that. And I just wish we could kind of get back to those kind of days where we're just having fun, making some content, making grass grow, but also just being respectful of everybody's knowledge and where they're at and that kind of stuff. So I just want to say thanks, guys, and everybody else that's in the Discord group and the lawn forums and all the other chat groups that I'm a part of that's kind of feeding into this stuff. I appreciate you guys. I really do. So there. Was that good? Do I get an Oscar now? What's that it?
That was good.
You win the sir. You win the Emmy.
Yeah. That was heartfelt. It was probably more heartfelt than I was prepared for.
Super eloquent.
And I gotta do something to undo all that. And so I'm gonna say, sorry, Castleberry, but those days are over. It's all died by the wayside, and it's never coming back. I'm just kidding. That's terribly pessimistic, and I'm surely the more optimist of everybody on this panel here. Seriously, thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure, and
Thanks for having me.
Love the content you put out, but even more so, I love hearing the nostalgia that goes on in your head, because if for all men that are out there, especially men with families, Castleberry is the person that you should all look at and be inspired as a positive role model in your life, as a husband, as a dad, and as a man, and strive to be more like. And I mean that from the absolute fucking bottom of my heart. That those people are out there, and Castleberry is one of them, and I do not use that lightly, by all means. So do check it out. We are going to head out of here and continue to make an ass out of ourselves. And if you would like to do that, you can do so as well at patreon.com/burn and return. We have to buy our friends because we have horrific personalities. Nobody enjoys us, and no one gives a shit about our tiny little corner of the internet that we hang out with. So we get on here, and at the beginning of shows, sometimes, mostly at the end of the shows, we beg for friends because we're lonely and sad and depressed and decrepit and frail, falling apart, egotistical, cluster B personalities. Did I cover it all?
Thank you, Matt.
Oh,
yeah, thank you, Matt.
Go ahead,
Thanks
hit
a
it
lot.
one more time, J Pink. For I just want to be remembered as
you are a fucking pussy.
I am what I eat. Y'all have a good one. Bye.